Mortem tuam annunciamus Domine, et tuam resurrectionem confitemur, donec venias.
Welcome back to the Pinedo Brothers podcast. If you don't know who we are filmmaker brothers who are here to revitalize the world of Catholic art. We're making this podcast to talk about what it means to be an artist and to be Catholic and how those two go hand in hand so well. Today, we're talking a lot about that. But before we get started, we just listened to this beautiful song, and I'm going to let JP tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, it's a new artist that we discovered called Cassia and Myrrh. I'm showing you their website right now. They specialize in Gregorian chant. Shout out to my good buddy, Casey Quayo, sound mixer, who turned me on to them. Hope you enjoyed listening to some of their stuff. Deeply beautiful stuff. You can check out more of what they do at cassiaandmyrrh.com. Mm-hmm. Anyway, Pete, I'm excited to be talking about madness.
Yes, welcome to the madness episode. Today, we are talking about God, art, and insanity. And when we look through art and look at the artist, we oftentimes sense, I think, a hinge, in most artists, a hinge of insanity, I would say. Because art is oftentimes about passion, and passion and insanity are very much linked, I would say. You look like you were going to say something. What were you going to say?
Oh, well, no, that very much hinges with what my personal artistic sensibilities hinge with madness. I mean, there's a reason why my personal website is called Poet and Lunatic.
And you can find them at poetandlunatic.com. So one of my favorite artists is Vincent van Gogh. And I think a lot of us are very familiar with his story. A very definitive artist for his genre, and whose work I think is absolutely beautiful, and certain works of his move me to tears when I see them, or when I take time to stop and reflect on them. They're very, very powerful. And as can we pull up an example of a Van Gogh? I think,
Absolutely.
Of course, we can get the one everyone knows, Starry Night.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know who Van Gogh is, you'll look at this painting and be like, oh, yes, I do know who he is. So very, very tragic story, really. And so we're going to dive into that in just a second. But of course, we also have another very famous artist, Michelangelo, who also apparently struggled with problems of mental illness. Yeah, so both of these artists are known for being masters of their craft, for moving people for hundreds of years now, and yet they struggled with mental illness, and they struggled with their self-image, which really kind of goes to show that anyone who is going through that and having these internal struggles, they're not alone. Because even here we have these masters who you would think would have, them being at the top of their game, would have great lives and tons of confidence, but here they are having these struggles that I think all of us kind of have to struggle with, and some much more than others.
So I think a question that's coming to my mind is, are you linking madness and artistry?
I wouldn't say that exactly. What I think I would say is that what is art? It's an expression of what's inside of you, and hopefully of something that is beautiful. But if you, I think being human, and part of the human condition is that we oftentimes do struggle with these internal battles, and you see that in the work of masters, of great artists, because it transfers into their work. So I think it is more what you see. I'm not denying that maybe a lot of engineers struggle with these problems, but you definitely see it in the way of art, and it has a way of transferring into their work so that we can see and then and learn from it.
Are you saying what makes an artist good is what makes an artist tortured?
I think that could be the case. I don't think it's necessarily. I mean, trying to think of if there are any other artists who had. I mean, nobody has a perfect life, right? And I think that the best stories are ones that truly come from the best stories. The best works of art are ones that come from the heart of that artist or that writer. You don't want to read or look at a painting, read a story if it doesn't have any sense of passion in it. Mm-hmm. And I think what oftentimes the most passion comes from our most painful points. Mm.
It makes me think about a talk that old JP, the other JP, the big JP, Jordan Peterson was giving one time about artist, and he and if you don't know Jordan Peterson, brilliant psychologist from Canada, who himself has demons and is tortured quite a bit by those demons, but I'm a big admirer of his, and he was giving a talk about what makes an artist, or it was more of a Q&A. They were a curator of a museum was asking him, so how can you generate great artists? Like, how can we incubate them? And Peterson goes, well, I'll tell you what, make sure that they have a miserable childhood and are completely unhappy in life, and then they'll probably have that's a pretty good start.
And so oftentimes, yes, great art is born from these struggles, and you can really see it in the work of one of my favorite painters here, Van Gogh. Recently in where we live, Houston, there was a art exhibition from Van Gogh, and I got to see some real Van Goghs in person, and it was a really very chilling experience. It was absolutely very, very moving. And one of the ones I got to see, I wonder if you could pull it up for us, the Asylum Forest one. And we can see them. Mm-hmm. All right. This one is crazy to me. I spent a lot of time just kind of taking it in and staring at it because I don't know if you can see the colors if they transfer so well, but they really speak to what I think Van Gogh must have been feeling at that time. He painted this while he was in an insane asylum, and they said that he would like to just walk around the grounds every day. And even here, while he is literally crippled by anxiety and depression and these things, he's doing this great work that we're looking at in a museum. Like, I don't know how much, over 100 years later. But you really, really, I think I would point out just the use of colors that he has here that just, I would say, speak to his internal sense of, for one thing, twistedness. You can see the trees twisting around each other, and there's no solid ground in the painting. It's almost like he's walking in water. And you see this one figure there in the trees who's leaning against a tree, and he himself is very twisted, and he's blue and green, which I think speaks to what he feels is his health, his self-image. He's lost in this twisted forest with no solid ground, and it's a scary painting, but it also has, like I said, so much feeling. And when I looked at it in the museum, I felt like he was telling me his story in this painting. That feeling, that lack of stability, that lack of direction. Does me going through this and then you looking at it, JP, does that, does it say anything to you? Are you getting any of this? Am I sounding crazy?
Of course it makes sense. It's how this piece is speaking to you. And it's spoken to a countless millions, proven by the fact that we were looking at a website called Reproduction Gallery, and for a small reproduction of it, they were charging $300, and people would pay that. Yeah, and the largest they had was a $500 option, and that's not that large actually when I'm looking at it. So it just goes to show that you are not alone. You're definitely not sounding crazy. People have been spoken to by this piece for generations, for centuries now, and it doesn't mean that the way it speaks to you is the way that it speaks to these countless other generations that have passed. Well, not countless, but the other generations that have passed. But it does validate that your feelings are real.
I know that his actual paintings are being sold for upwards of the millions. So I mean, I think that also speaks to I mean, I don't know exactly what it speaks to, but it says something, I would say, that here he is thinking he's a failure in life when he's remembered now as one of the greats. But there is another one, which would be good if we could pull up. The Van Gogh's wheat field is also very, very special. This is the field, and this is his last painting, the field in which he shot himself. And again, I think you feel that sense of, for one thing, extreme isolation. He felt truly that he was alone, and that he had no real shelter. But this is could be taken as a peaceful scene, but it can also almost feel like again, waves and water and a ship at sea, and you see the darkness above, but also these birds flying into the wind, which how he maybe saw himself taking his life as a way to join those birds and to go up with them. I kind of hope, and since I do love this artist, I do hope repentance or a conversion before he ultimately passed away. There's a dramatization of this whole story, which I don't know how much is accurate from in the movie, but it's a really great movie, which I think we're going to show a scene from, called Loving Vincent. And the entire movie is animated in the style of Van Gogh's paintings, which is, if nothing else, extremely aesthetically pleasing to watch. But it's also, I would say, a good movie. So if we could pull that up, and we'll show it to y'all, and then we can talk about it for a little bit.
No, but it's probably still muddy.
I heard you were Vincent's paint supplier, so I thought you might know Theo.
We need a drink, I think. It's brandy. Do take a seat.
He wasn't at the address we've got. The guy there said you might know.
I'm afraid you'll never deliver that letter to Theo Van Gogh.
Oh, I see. Well, how come?
2 hearts, 1 mind. That's what Vincent told me. Maybe that was the case after all. Because after Vincent died, Theo went into sharp decline.
Did you hear something, my love?
He'd been poorly before, but
I like that.
Vincent's death destroyed him. He had actually been with him a whole day at the end. But Vincent insisted they use the time to discuss life, not death. And no suicide note either. So it stayed a mystery. And Theo just kept asking why. 6 months after we buried Vincent, Theo was dead too.
Wow, the 2 of them. So how did Vincent die?
He shot himself in the fields above Auvers, by his easel, doing what he loved, painting to the end.
Do you know why?
No. Theo thought his unhappiness went right back to childhood. He tried so hard to fit into his family. But he never succeeded in this. Vincent told me he was the oldest, but not the first. There was another Vincent, his stillborn older brother. He thought that boy was the perfect Vincent, that he could never measure up to in his mother's eyes. He struggled to be what they wanted him to be. He joined his uncle's art dealership and was thrown out in disgrace. He tried for his father's profession, the church, but the pastor exams were too hard for him, so he took a job as a lowly missionary. He managed to get sacked even from that. Yet another dead end. But Theo says he believes in him, and that if Vincent will fight for himself, he will fight alongside him. And that was it. Vincent picks up a brush for the first time at 28. And with Theo's support, there is no stopping him.
What happened then?
Paris happened. He came here, of course. They all do. Everyone does. Monet, Toulouse, Signac, Bernard, Manet. Everybody, because everything that happens in art happens here. And where do they all buy their paints? Herr Tanguy's, of course.
Waitress!
A drink. Make me pure. Cheers.
We'll soon have you pure. We'll keep that. Thank you.
Pure is purer. We must be fine. To the bile! An ego like no other, I grant you. But a weekend Pieta. Look at him. Always joy. What is it? Your salon entry? Which way up is it?
Throw up, Henri.
I can finish it in a minute for you. Then you can drink.
Oh, I forgot. You can't.
Behave.
What? I'm just being helpful.
You're being vile.
Finally, the vile doth beguile.
For many artists, Paris is the final destination, but not for him. It was a stopover to learn what he needed to learn. And then he was off in search of his own path.
No, you're full of it. Do that. Put him to sleep. Put him down. It's the kindest thing.
I saw him once more after 2 years. He was calmer,
Thank you, Pam.
more assured.
Bye.
Take good care. And I thought, this is a man whose story will end well. His star finally rising. His revolution won. So think how shocking it was to be standing over Vincent's coffin just 6 weeks later. So sad. For many, he died a martyr for art. But for me, it seems odd.
Why?
In only 8 years, he had traveled from amateur to an artist of influence. Unbelievable. Monet declared him the shining star of the Independent Artists' Fair. And he was cured, according to his doctor, Dr. Gachet, who had looked after Vincent in Auvers. I met him at the funeral. There were just a few artists from Paris. And him? You'd have thought he was Vincent's brother. He was the one who made the speech, and he cried all the way through it. And an hour later, he was running around taking Vincent's best paintings off the wall as if they were his. And they were his fee for treating Vincent. It seemed odd, but the doctor had Theo's full confidence. I understand he's still close to the Van Gogh family. Maybe you should ask him why Vincent did it.
I've seen the whole film before, but this was your first time today watching this clip from it. Did it evoke any thoughts from you, or what did you think?
Oh, so many. First one I have is good gravy. That guy started with his medium at 28. That's mad skills right there. I've been working for a long time as a filmmaker in my medium, and I know that I'm better than what I was when I started out. I know that I'm a lot better than what I was when I started out, which goes to show that I was really bad when I started out. And the ability for someone to just pick up something and do it is just hats off. That kind of blows my mind a little bit. But the second thing that brought to me is kind of hearkening back to the original question, which is, do you have to be tortured in order to be an artist? I think that to answer that question, you have to say, well, what is art? And that is something that you can see with this here little movie. The scene from the movie is incredibly artistic. It's something that allows you to see a different state. I think what an artist does is he shows, I have a vision of something. This is my vision. And he allows that vision to go into other people through his medium or her medium. So if you're writing a script, or you're writing a story, or you're making a film, it's through watching that you see what's going on, that vision. You see in a way you couldn't have seen without it. And that's something that you do with watching this movie, is you see something in a way you can't do without it. You are able to go and see things maybe how Vincent was able to see them, which of course is how he was able to create all these masterpieces. He saw the world in a different way.
Right.
So I really enjoyed watching those 7 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think one of my favorite things that stands out in there is how he had such a what must have been immense sense of insufficiency. He felt like, even it was saying, at least here in the film, that he as a child felt like he could never compare. He had this imaginary image of his deceased brother, of his older brother, being the perfect one, and that he could never measure up no matter what he did, which is such a damaging view to have, to compare yourself not only to someone who is alive, but someone who is basically just an imaginary figure in your head. That must have been like so torturous for him. And then going and continuing on as he grew older, him trying to fulfill the expectations that he just couldn't fulfill for various reasons. And so all of these things contributing to, like you said, that it contributes to his art, and that he's able to transfer all of those feelings and that frustration. But what an incredible artist, and what a service he's done for people today who are able to connect with his work and to glean, I think, hope from his struggle. So I think that like I said, I hope that he was able to come to some sense of peace before he passed away, especially with a sense of peace with God, because I know he was a Catholic, obviously not the most well-formed Catholic, But he did do a few religious works as well.
I don't know about that. Do you really think that formation is what would keep you from doing self-harm, like that level of self-harm?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that he was clearly, he had emotional problems, and I think he also clearly had a clinical problem, and a chemical problem, which anyone, no matter what their faith background is, would struggle with. But I'm just, I guess, more speaking to what the rest of his life, not really the way that he took his life, but the rest of his life. I don't think that the faith was something that was really central to his his world and his life. But he
probably to his sadness, like he didn't seem like a very happy. I mean, obviously I don't think faith will make you all of a sudden everything's rosy and you're happy with faith. That doesn't work that way, although it would be nice. Maybe it wouldn't have been quite as sad of a story. That's the thing that drives home with this scene is, that guy who's watching, he's saying, I thought this was going to be a happy story. And it's not. It's not. That's always something that struck me when you're hearing a story, is if you don't know if it's going to be happy or not. And that's like our lives too. We don't know what our life story is going to be like. It could be a tragedy. Maybe it's a mercy. Remember, the Greeks used to think it was a damnation to know what the future held, because the greatest damnation out there. So maybe it's a mercy that we don't know, but we are writing it as we go through it. So it is an interesting, that scene was very awe-inspiring.
Absolutely. I mean, I think when it comes to like your life being a tragedy, I'm kind of more of the opinion, I would say, that we don't know what the future holds and how our life will turn out to be. But I think that we do have some say in how we view things and how we can respond to our situation. And I think that faith is something that's of course, very vital to that. I think he was just trying to remember some of the works that he did that were religious ones. I know he did. Oh yes, he did the Pieta version of that.
Oh, we're talking about Michelangelo now.
No, actually, we're still Van Gogh. He did that, but also that's a good smooth transition to Michelangelo. I'm just curious though, do you have a favorite work from Michelangelo?
Well, the one that everyone knows is gorgeous. The Pieta. I'm showing people now. Although, of course, the Sistine Chapel, creation, the God's creation of man, on the ceiling of that, that's gorgeous. I mean, that whole entire ceiling, he did that. That's amazing. So and we can go see that. That's crazy. We can go see this amazing, awe-inspiring thing. It blows everyone's mind when everyone walks into there. So that's the two that I think of. How about you?
Yeah, no, I think Pieta is a good one to focus on, because of course that is a picture of pain, of the Blessed Virgin Mary holding her dead son, Jesus Christ, and that is just the pinnacle of agony. And yet there's also, I think, a sense of peace in there as well, because I mean, the Blessed Virgin Mary is an example that all of humanity can look to for absolute trust in God. But who can imagine what it was that she was feeling, and how great a trust she must have had in God to persist through something like that. She knows who this is. Like, can you imagine like how that would shake your worldview? Because we get shaken when loved ones or friends pass in our own lives, but we know them to be flawed and flawed individuals. But she knew that this is literally God the Son of God, and he is a perfect being, and here he is broken and beaten and killed. So what, aside from the fact of her loving him as her son, how does that make you feel? What thoughts of confusion and earth-shattering kind of feelings must you be feeling? And that's encapsulated here in this work by Michelangelo, which I can only assume that this also came from his own struggles and his own pain, that he poured himself into this work. And I know that's another reason why, like, again, just like Van Gogh, we have these strong feelings and this connection with this work of his, because he poured himself into it.
You know, it's a very different sort of piece than Van Gogh. You look at the Pieta, and the first thing I'm struck by is the incredible level of detail. Like, he sees more detail with his sculpture than we're able to actually process with our eyes. That's fascinating to me, because we couldn't look at that level of how the robes, Mary's robes, and how they're the wrinkles of them, and how they kind of cascade down like a waterfall. We're not able to pick up that. But if an artist is able to capture and create that, we can see something and process it, because we're stopping to admire that which is in front of us. It gives us this strange superpower to be able to do more than what our eyes could be able to do. And of course, yeah, speaking to what you were saying, the tragedy of it. I mean, it's spoken to countless people, non-religious souls have come from miles to see this in person. And then of course it's in every church. Every single Catholic out there will know what this piece is, because if they've gone into a church, they've probably seen it, a reproduction of it, I mean. So it's absolutely awe-inspiring what people can do with art. That's something that I say whenever anyone says there's too many people out there. Have you seen what people can do? Mm-hmm. Have you have any, like, the cures that we're able to come up with, the amazing things we're able to create? Mm-hmm. Sure, we do a lot of bad as well, but what we're able to accomplish, just, it blows my mind. I'm taking a class right now on data science, and what we can do with numbers is awe-inspiring as well. What math can do it blows my mind what people have been able to accomplish. And then something like the Pieta, a Michelangelo comes around and he's able to do something like that. Or Van Gogh comes around and he's able to do something like that. People are important. Every single soul is important. Mm-hmm. And when you see something like this, that's where I go. It's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I am so grateful that Vincent van Gogh had his 32 years of life here, or whatever it was, that he was able to, in that short life, create so much that has then enriched every generation since. It's amazing to me.
Right. Yeah. And like you say, you can't write off any person, because you're never really sure of what they're capable of, what beauty can come from the hurt and the brokenness inside of a person, or from any aspect of a person's life.
Right. That's what I was going to say. It doesn't have to be tragedy as much, or right. It could just be. Art comes from anywhere. That's it's the great equalizer out there.
I think right there, I'm more pointing towards that. Oftentimes, people will feel like they are not, like, they have that feeling of insufficiency, that they cannot do what they feel they have to, or that they would desire to, because they feel that they're too broken. Which I think is really what I'm trying to zone in on here, is that despite those feelings, you can't write yourself off, or you can't write someone else off because they may be hurting. And you're right, like, great art can also come from joy and from peace, but you don't have to feel that you are insufficient because of your brokenness. I think that's what I'm I'm trying to say right there.
That makes sense.
And someone who talks about this a lot is also one of our favorite authors, one of my favorites, G.K. Chesterton. You're kind of more the expert on Chesterton. I have read a lot of his stuff, but I think I would say that he delves a lot into insanity, or at least maybe what the world sees as insanity, and in instability, and he speaks to that in almost all his stories. There's someone who's kind of a little bit unhinged, I would say. In Man Alive, his play Magic, which we were just recently reading, and Ball on the Cross, all of these different stories, their characters oftentimes do seem to be kind of teetering on the edge of sanity and insanity.
Yeah. Well, Chesterton had a very interesting relationship with madness, because when he's younger, he almost goes mad. You read his writing as a younger man, and he's talking about how he was this close, guys. Like, he could have very careful there. Don't die. They go down the wrong pipe.
Yeah.
Careful.
First time drinking.
First time, except every other time that we've been on here. So he's this close to teetering over the edge, but he doesn't. He doesn't go over the edge. And something that he writes about is the madman. There's two types of madmen in Chesterton's writings. There's the madman that everyone wants to lock up because he sees too much of what's true and they can't stand it. And then there's the madman, and that's the artist, by the way. That's the artist madman. And then there's the scientist madman. The scientist madman is pure logic and reason, which is true madness in Chesterton's writings. If you just use pure logic and reason, your brain, I think as he puts it, will split trying to get the heavens into it. While if you're an artist, you soar up in the heavens because you don't take yourself too seriously. Then you take yourself lightly. So you soar into the heavens. So his writings are just scattered with these types of tropes, these ideas of what true madness is, but then also you need to be mad in order to see the truth and say it honestly, because that's what it takes to be an artist. There's a little bit of madness there, but it's a good madness. So there's two types here. And I think when you gave me the idea, there's a perfect selection of Chesterton books that it's not as well known. The Poet and the Lunatics is one of my faves. I really, really enjoyed these so much that I took Poet and Lunatic as my personal sort of mantra. And it's okay. Not my favorite Chesterton, because I think that would probably be Ball on the Cross or Napoleon of Notting Hill. One of the two. But this is up there. And if you don't mind, I would love to read a little bit of a scene from that, which kind of shows an expose of the two different types of madness. Great. Let me bring that up. So just to prep it, this scene, what's going on is there's a Gabriel Gale, who is a poet. And this poet, Gabriel Gale, is very fond of drawing caricatures of public figures. He just so happens to have inherited by a thoroughfare, so a lot of foot traffic goes by, a large barn building, several large barn buildings. And his favorite thing, he would always try and speak out. He would write to the editor, and he would write to sorry, I was distracted. Mio's just jumped on my lap. You guys couldn't see it, but our Maine Coon cat decided to make a surprise appearance and just darted by. Anyway, back to madness. Gabriel Gale is he likes to draw caricatures. He's a very good painter of public figures, and he's able to it's not just complete caricature, but it captures somewhat of the inner soul of this public figure, which shows the evilness that lies within. So you just imagine any sordid politician that you might know. He would not mock them. He would draw a portrait of them that actually revealed what's inside. And so people would see it and they'd be like, oh my gosh, I see the truth of who this person is now, which of course the public figures don't like at all. And the reason why Gabriel turned to this is he would always try and write to the, there you go. So you can see that I'm not crazy. This is, there really is a cat, folks. And he decided to want to make an appearance. So the reason why he turned to this weird method of telling people about these public figures is because he would keep on writing and writing and writing to the the newspapers of the time or the editorials, and no one would pay attention to him. They all silenced him. And so this was his way, like, oh, I've got this medium, I'm going to do it. And this is what happens to him. He's out walking, just to set the scene, with two people that he thinks are scientists that want to hear more about what his art is. And they're in a garden. And he's just been swinging on a swing because he's an artist and it was his flight of fancy. And he decided to swing on the swing, an old swing, and it broke suddenly. So he's on the ground and he's just surveying the scene with this broken wood swing next to him, or string swing next to him. It was in that moment that Gale looked out dreamingly at the light upon the lawn, and in the stillness in his inmost mind, a light broke on him like lightning. One of the terrible institutions of his life. One of the terrible intuitions of his life. Against the silver light on the river, the dark frame of the forsaken swing stood up like a gallows. There was no trace of the seat or the ropes, not merely in their proper place, but even on the ground where they had fallen. Sweeping his eyes slowly and searchingly round the scene, he saw them at last, huddled and hidden in a heap behind the bench where Starkey was sitting. In an instant he understood everything. He knew the profession of the two men on each side of him. He knew why they were asking him to describe the processes of his mind. Soon they would be taking out a document and signing it. He would not leave the arbor a free man. So you are both doctors, he observed cheerfully, and you both think I'm mad. The word is very unscientific, said Simeon Wolfe in a soothing fashion. You are of a certain type which friends and admirers would be wise to treat in a certain way. But it need not in no sense be an unfriendly and uncomfortable way. You are an artist, with that form of artistic temperament which is necessarily a mode of modified megalomania, which expresses itself in the form of exaggeration. You cannot see a large blank wall without having an uncontrollable appetite for covering it with large pictures. You cannot see a swing hung in the air without thinking of flying ships careening through the air. I would venture to guess that you would never see a cat without thinking of a tiger, or a lizard without thinking of it of a dragon. That is correct, said Gale gravely. I never do. Then his mouth twisted a little, as if a whimsical idea had come into his mind. Psychology is certainly very valuable, he said. It seems to teach us how to see into each other's minds. You, for instance, have a mind which is very interesting. You've reached a condition which I think I recognize. You are in that particular attitude in which the subject, when he thinks of anything, never thinks of the center of anything. You only see the edges eaten away. Your malady is the opposite of mine. To what you call making a tiger out of a cat, or what some call making a mountain out of a molehill, you do not go on and make a cat more of a cat. You're always trying to work back and prove that it is less than a cat, that it is defective, or a mentally deficient cat. But a cat is a cat. That is the supreme sanity which is so thickly clouded in your mind. After all, a molehill is a hill, and a mountain is a hill. But you've got into a state of a mad queen who said she knew hills compared to which this was a valley. You can't grasp a thing called a thing. Nothing for you has a central stalk of sanity. There's no core to your cosmos. Your trouble began with being an atheist. I've not confessed to being an atheist, said Wolfe, staring. I have not confessed to being an artist, replied Gale, or have any uncontrolled artistic appetites or any of that stuff. But I will tell you one thing. I can only exaggerate things the way they are going. But I'm not often wrong about the way that they're going. You may be as sleek as a cat, but I knew you were evolving into a tiger. And I guess this little lizard could be turned by black magic into a dragon. As he spoke, he looked grimly at Starkey, and out under the dark arch of the arbor, as if out of a closing prison, with these two ghouls sitting on each side of the gate. Beyond was the gaunt shape like a gallows, and beyond the green and silver of the garden, and the stream shone like a lost paradise of liberty. But it was characteristic of him that even when he was practically hopeless, he liked being logically triumphant. He liked turning the tables on his critics, even when, so as to speak, they were as abstract as multiplication tables. Why, my learned friends, he went on contemptuously, do you really suppose you are any fitter to write a report on my mind than I am on yours? You can't see any further into me than I can into you, not half so far. Didn't you know a portrait painter has to value people at sight as much as if they're a doctor? And I do it better than you. I have a knack that way. That's why I can paint those pictures on the wall, and I could paint your pictures as big as a house. I know what is the back of your mind, Dr. Simeon Wolfe, and it's a chaos of exceptions with no rule. You could find anything abnormal because you have no normal. You could find anybody mad. And as for why you specially want to find me mad, why, that is another disadvantage of being an atheist. You do not think anything will smite you for the vile treachery you have sold yourself to do today. There is no doubt about your condition now, said Dr. Wolfe with a sneer. You look like an actor, but you're not a very good actor, answered Gale calmly. I can see that my guess was correct. These rack renters and assurers who oppress the poor in my own native valley could not find any pettifogging law to prevent me from painting the colors of their souls in hell. So they have bribed you and another cheap doctor to certify me for the madhouse. I know the sort of man you are. I know this is not the first dirty trick you've done to help the rich out of a hole. You would do anything for your paymasters, possibly the murder of the unborn. Wolfe's face was still wrinkled with his Semitic sneer, but his olive tint had turned to a sort of loathsome yellow. Starkey called out with a sudden shrillness, as abrupt as the bark of a dog. Speak more respectfully. There's Dr. Starkey, too, continued the poet lazily. Let's turn our medical attention to the mental state of Dr. Starkey. As he rolled his eyes with ostentatious languor in the new direction, he was arrested by a change in the scene without. A strange man was standing under the frame of the swing, looking up at it with his head on one side like a bird. He was very small and sturdy figure, quite conventionally clad, and Gale would only suppose he was a stray guest at the hotel. His presence did not help any very much, for the law was probably on the side of the doctors, and Gale continued to address them. The mental deficiency of Dr. Starkey, he said, consists of having forgotten the truth. You, Starkey, have no skeptical philosophy like your friend. You are a practical man, my dear Starkey, but you only have told lies so incessantly and from so early an age that you could never see anything as it is, but only as it could be made to look, because beside each thing stands the unreal thing that is its shadow, and you see the shadow first. You are very quick in seeing it. You go on direct to the deceptive potentialities of anything. You see at once if anything could be used as anything else. You are the original man who went down the crooked lane. I could see quickly you saw that swing and would provide ropes to tie me up if I were violent, and that going first into this arbor, should I be cornered, with you on each side of me. Yet the swing on the arbor were my own idea, and this again is typical of you. You're not a scientific thinker like the other scoundrel. You've always picked up other men's ideas, but you pick as swiftly as a pickpocket. In fact, when you see an idea sticking out of a pocket, you can hardly help picking it. That's why you're mad. You can't resist being clever, or rather borrowing cleverness, which means you have sometimes been too clever to be lucky. You're a shabbier sort of scamp, and I rather fancy you have been in prison. Starkey sprang to his feet, snatching up the ropes and throwing them on the table. Tie him up and gag him, he cried. He's raving. And that's the excerpt.
That's incredible.
Well, I appreciate you indulging me to read a little bit of GK. I love reading GK. And so many things, when you say it out loud, pop up to you when you didn't realize it as much at first. The first thing that I realized, there was a little bit of anti-Semitism there, which, you see sometimes in Chesterton's work, which is unfortunate, very unfortunate, but also common to the time. So that's something that we talk about, is you have to realize that this is a time that it comes with. Not that that is good in any time, but that it's part of it, you know? Mm-hmm. And you see the art for what it is and not throwing it out. And there's so much here that is current to this time that you can look over that which is not. For example, it's so common. This is exactly what, when you speak of the truth in this day and age, like, we don't know how long we might be on YouTube, you know, because they're silencing anyone that speaks in these days. This is a time of great silencing. And you see, that's what the whole mode of this scene is some person who is just mad enough to say what is happening out there is now going to try and be sent off to the madhouse. It's not even enough to send him off to the madhouse. They want to gag him. This is so much of what we see. And these two types that you see here, one who's too clever, he has to be mad. And the other one is too logical, he has to be mad. It goes to show when you take everything to its fullest extent, and Chesterton saw this so well because he tried it, and he just barely survived to come back. You're left with nothing but insanity. If you take something to the, like, logic and reason and cleverness to the extreme end, I'm not saying it's good to be irrational. I'm just saying that there's some things that are beyond what we're able to comprehend. And that's what an artist is able to do. He's able to translate that which is incomprehensible into that which others can understand, even if the artist is not able to. So there's different types of madness in Chesterton.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I don't think I'd have read that scene or that work of Chesterton's. Yeah, that's pretty incredible. That is interesting there that he has that line there about the unborn.
Yeah, that's a good one right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because he's a prophet. He's a real prophet. He's able to see where we're headed. And he saw it. Like, he called it. Mm-hmm. Even kill the unborn. Possibly the murder of the unborn. You would do anything for your paymasters. That's where we are. That's what, there are doctors out there that do that for the payment. Like, I cannot... I want to scream at, like, every art piece that I make that there is something that is so tragic that's happening, and how can we not speak to this, like the murder of the unborn? Mm-hmm. We had this debate in the family, like, is it ever right to not put your hand on your heart and not salute the flag and not stand for the national anthem? Would that ever be right? And in my mind, I thought, okay, this is a multivariate equation. Obviously, it's not right there's no cause to do it for some abuse that happened hundreds of years ago, which we've worked to fix. That is not right. But there's abuses that are happening now, like the murder of the unborn. If some pro-life person was to go out and do it, and I would not be the one to do it because I don't think that's the right way to protest. But I think it would be a lot more understandable because that's something that's happening and people are not doing it. Like, if we don't want to listen about this. Mm-hmm. And Chesterton is someone who's prophetically saying, this is where we're headed with all of this. Mm-hmm. This type of devotion to something which is baser will lead us in this way. Mm-hmm. And you see it.
Yeah. And Chesterton is very prophetic there. And I think it's really tying everything together there in that the kind of madness and true insanity that we suffer from mm-hmm. as a society today is really the rejection of the human person for what and who they are. Today, I think we are always trying to play what we call, like, identity. It's literally called identity politics. We're building a political world based on superficial identities. And then not embracing the person as a true human person. And I think it all ties in together. We have this this very cold and removed view of humanity. And when you do that, when you take away the humanity of a human person, then you can now be whatever you want to be. Mm-hmm. You can be a pansexual, different, because if humanity has no true deep meaning, then there is nothing as the human person. And we get things like abortion, where we are denying the humanity of preborn children, which is crazy because, people will make the argument that they're not human and there's no other option. And it applies to, so it's like you're saying with Chesterton, we have the true insanity of what I would say is the removal of the human person from the human person. And then we have the artist here who is insane in his own way by seeing things as they truly are. And so I think that it's important for there to be Catholic art that speaks to the human person. And we don't want to present an idealized or like how we wish things were to be, but we should present our art from truly speaking from our hearts and from how we see the world, because we can't project our ideal image onto others, and that goes for life. You can't expect someone to be perfect, or you can't expect them to be who you want them to be. You have to accept them as who they are. And so I think that we're going to bring up, planning on bringing up how today our society is suffering from a lot of anxiety problems and from depression. And I know that last year, especially with all the lockdowns and the pandemic and everything, that the suicide rates went way up. I don't know what they were exactly, but it was not good. And I think that is all it's all tied in together. When you remove the humanity from a person, it's not going to be good things that happen.
Yeah, and if you're out there and you're listening and you're struggling with these things, hopefully it's comforting to know that you're not alone. Like, this is not something that you have to face alone. I think there's solace out there in the brotherhood of suffering out there, and living in this world there is a lot of suffering, and that's not going to go away. We're there with you, and that's something that you can see in great art. I think that's the point that you're bringing up here, is this universal brotherhood of pain. It is the human condition, and we can share it and experience together, and in that way there's a communion. Of course, there's deeper communions that can be found, like in the Holy Eucharist, the communion that we experience in Mass, as often as we're able to go. That is an incredibly deeper communion, but it is also built in pain. Like, there's a reason why Calvary is the central point, which each and every Mass revolves around. That sacrifice, that salvific sacrifice that is Mass, that is Calvary. So there's hope out there that can be found, and if there's anything that we can do to help, obviously you let us know. We want to help in as little as we're able to, and hopefully people that watch our art can find that hope. That's something that I think we both always try to put in to our work, is you can keep going just for one more day, or just one more step. Just keep on trying, and if that doesn't work, maybe try something different. That's a line from the movie, but keep on. The movie The Extrovert, but that's we're in this together, don't pull the trigger. Like, Vincent is so worth it. Don't pull the trigger. In the end, hang on, because your part to play in this story that you're writing is so special. It's so magnificent. We just don't see it yet. And little things are just as magnificent as big things. So if you're thinking that which you are working on is so insignificant that no one will notice it, but that doesn't make it less insignificant just because it's not noticed. Look at Vincent.
Mm-hmm.
It's a perfect example. He was completely unnoticed. Well, maybe not completely, but largely unnoticed. And look what his work has gone on to do. I'm not saying that whatever it is the viewer's working on will go on to be, Starry Night, but it will be something. That's a good, it makes me think of Tolkien's Leaf by Niggle, which talks about this idea very much.
Yeah. And it's true that we're, as humans, all connected to each other. Whether we like it or not, we do share that communion of as human beings. And you, and that I think I see that as a reason for hope, because you don't know the impact that you've had, like you were saying. You can never really be sure until hopefully we get to heaven of the ways that you have affected others and have helped others. And so oftentimes we have these feelings of insufficiency and of almost worthlessness, but no one is worthless. No child who is in the womb is worthless. No child outside the womb is worthless. No human being at any point in their life, no matter what their condition is worthless, because they are created in the image of God, and that's something to hold on to, and to I think try to work towards building your identity around that, because we constantly are disappointing ourselves and many times hurting ourselves, and we have this frustration of having to deal with the human condition. But God is always present, because He is. We are made in His image, so He is within us, and He is in every corner, and even the darkest corner of the earth. So even in the darkest days, in the darkest corners, I think that it is important that we try to keep on finding hope and to be looking for that hope. And that's where I think we can take a lot of the beauty and the true, even somewhat of an innocence from the works of people like Van Gogh and Michelangelo and Chesterton and these great masters of their crafts. And we take hope from that.
Seems like a good place to leave it.
Yeah, before I start crying. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we're glad to have you here. Thanks for sitting with us, and thank you, JP.
Of course. Everyone, please like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps a lot. All three of those, or any one that you're able to. We greatly appreciate it.
And we're wishing you the very best. Have a great one. Until next time.